Chapter 1 Hidden Cracks. Nathaniel Nate Garrison stared at the code on his monitor, the blue light illuminating his focused expression. At 35, he had the weathered look of someone who had fought his way up from nothing. Raised in a trailer park in Nevada by a single mother who worked 3 jobs, Nate had clawed his way through community college and then earned a scholarship to MIT, where his brilliant mind flourished. The headquarters of Drake Technologies hummed around him. As a senior developer, Nate was respected but not celebrated. Exactly how he preferred it. His colleagues saw only what he allowed them to see. A quiet, competent programmer who kept to himself. None of them knew about his side projects or the patents he'd been quietly accumulating. Still here, Garrison? Maxwell Drake, the company founder, stopped by Nate's cubicle. Your wife called the front desk. Something about dinner reservations. Nate checked his watch and cursed under his breath. Thanks, Max lost track of time. That woman's too good for you. Drake joked, though there was an edge to his voice that Nate had learned to recognize. Maxwell had made his interest in Virginia clear from the day Nate had brought her to the company Christmas party 3 years ago. Do not I know it? Nate replied with a tight smile, shutting down his computer. Virginia, Ginny Garrison, née Hollister, was waiting at La Maison, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the white tablecloth when Nate arrived 20 minutes late. Let me guess, she said, not looking up from her phone. The algorithm was more interesting than dinner with your wife. I'm sorry, Gin. The Bellworth project deadline got moved up. She sighed dramatically, tossing her auburn hair over one shoulder. Of course it did. Heaven forbid Maxwell Drake's golden goose take a night off. The waiter arrived with champagne Nate had not ordered. Compliments of Mr. Salvatore, he said with a practiced smile. Ginny's face transformed, her irritation replaced by a dazzling smile. How thoughtful is he here tonight? Just left, Mrs. Garrison. He asked me to send his regards. Nate watched as his wife's eyes darted around the restaurant, disappointed. He knew Bryce Salvatore, the charismatic CEO of Luminary Innovations, the golden child of Silicon Valley and Drake's main competitor. Nate also knew Salvatore had never once spoken to him at industry events, yet somehow knew his wife's preferred champagne. Later that night, Nate lay awake beside his sleeping wife, revisiting the conversation they had over dinner. Ginny's complaints about their modest house in a mediocre neighborhood. Her thinly veiled comparisons between his salary and what her friend's husband earned. The way her eyes lit up whenever Luminary Innovations was mentioned. You could be so much more, she told him, not for the first time. If you just play the game instead of hiding in your little coding world. What Ginny did not know, what no one knew, was that Nate's little coding world had produced an algorithm that would revolutionize artificial intelligence processing. An algorithm he developed at home, away from Drake Technologies' intellectual property agreements. An algorithm worth billions to the right buyer. Nate's phone buzzed softly, attacked from his old college roommate, Hudson Reed. Everything's south in place. Paperwork tomorrow. You sure about this? Nate typed back one word. Yes. He glanced at his sleeping wife. The woman who once believed in him before she decided his ambitions were not grand enough. His pace too slow, his background too common. He thought of the lingering glances she exchanged with Bryce Salvatore at industry parties. The late nights she claimed to be networking. The faint cologne on her clothes that was not his. Tomorrow he would sign the final papers establishing Phoenix Capital, his new venture capital firm funded by silent partners who believed in his vision, and the first step in a plan that had been forming for months as he watched his wife's contempt grow in proportion to Bryce Salvatore's interest in her. Chapter 2 The Gift. On the morning of his 36th birthday, Nate woke to an empty bed. Jenny had left a note on her pillow, early meeting with Luminary's marketing team. Do not wait up tonight. Happy birthday. Nate crumpled the note, thinking back to his birthday just a year ago. They spent the weekend in Napa Valley. Jenny laughing as they stomped grapes at a boutique winery. When had things changed? His phone rang, Hudson calling to wish him happy birthday and to confirm their lunch meeting. The papers are all signed. Hudson reported. Phoenix Capital officially exists. With you as the majority shareholder, but your name buried so deep in the paperwork it would take a team of forensic accountants to find it. Good, Nate said. Any movement on the Luminary situation? Their stock dipped again yesterday. Salvatore's burning through capital like a teenager with his first credit card. The board's getting restless. Nate smiled. Perfect timing. At work, Maxwell Drake called Nate into his office. Got something for you, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. Promotion. Senior Systems Architect comes with a 30% raise and stock options. Nate's expression revealed nothing as he scanned the offer. Why now? Drake leaned back in his leather chair. Let's just say a little bird told me Luminary's been sniffing around you. CA not lose my best developer to those flashy bastards. Can I? That evening, Nate came home to find a small wrapped box on the kitchen counter with a card from Jenny. Inside the box was a $10 gift card to Burger King with a note for the guy who refuses to aim higher. Happy birthday to my underachiever husband. Maybe this matches your ambitions? Nate stared at the gift card, then at his wife's elegant handwriting. The calculated cruelty of it struck him like a physical blow. In 7 years of marriage, he'd never seen this side of her. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check her Instagram. Nate found Jenny's profile and saw a new post. A photo of her with Bryce Salvatore at what appeared to be a rooftop bar. Champagne glasses raised. The caption read, celebrating new beginnings with the visionary at Bryce Salvatore. #future is bright #moving up. The comments were filled with congratulations, including one from Bryce. Luminary's lucky to have you joining the team. Here's to working closely together. Nate's hands trembled as he set down his phone. His wife had taken a job with Luminary Innovations without telling him. Was openly flaunting her relationship with Salvatore. Had deliberately humiliated him on his birthday. He picked up the Burger King gift card again, running his finger along its edge. Then he reached for his phone and dialed Hudson. Move up the timeline, he said without preamble. I want to meet with the board members tomorrow. That night, when Jenny came home smelling of expensive and alcohol, Nate was waiting in the living room, the gift card on the coffee table between them. Enjoy your celebration, he asked quietly. Jenny's expression flickered between surprise and defiance. You saw the post? I did. Congratulations on the new job. When were you planning to tell me? She sank into the armchair across from him, kicking off her heels. I was waiting for the right moment. It all happened so fast. Like our marriage falling apart. Did that happen fast, too? Or was I just too blind to see it? Do not be dramatic, Nate. She gestures dismissively. We want different things. You recontent in your little cubicle writing code for someone else's vision. I want more. With Bryce Salvatore. She did not deny it. Bryce understands ambition. He sees my potential. And this. Nate held up the gift card. What was this supposed to accomplish? Jenny's laugh was cold. Consider it a wake-up call. You could be so much more. Nate, if you were not so average. Bryce is offering me everything you see, not. Excitement, status, a future that matters. I see. Nate pocketed the gift card instead. Thank you for the clarity. Where are you going? I have a late meeting. On your birthday? With who? Nate paused at the door. Someone who sees my potential. Chapter 3, The Algorithm. Dawn found Nate in Hudson's downtown office. The San Francisco skyline slowly emerging from darkness outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. They've been working through the night, preparing for the meeting with Phoenix Capital's investors. Run me through it one more time, Hudson said, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. Nate pointed to the complex diagram on the whiteboard. The Nexus algorithm processes data with 87% greater efficiency than anything currently on the market. It's essentially an artificial neural network that learns and adapts in real time without the computational overhead of traditional systems. And you developed this when exactly? Over the past 2 years. Nights, weekends. Away from Drake Technologies, equipment, and servers. Hudson whistled. And Drake has no idea. None. I kept everything compartmentalized. The patent applications are in process under Phoenix Capital's subsidiary. There was a knock at the door and Hudson's assistant entered. MS. Valentina Rothschild has arrived. Nate straightened his tie as Valentina swept in. Tall, commanding, with steel-gray hair and a sleek bob and eyes that missed nothing. As the managing partner of Obsidian Ventures, her reputation for ruthlessness was legendary. Mr. Garrison, she said, extending her hand. I've reviewed your proposal and technical documentation. Impressive if it performs as promised. It exceeds the specifications in the documentation. Nate replied confidently. Valentina took a seat. Cut to the chase. What are you proposing exactly? Nate exchanged a glance with Hudson before responding. A hostile takeover of Luminary Innovations. If Valentina was surprised, she did not show it. Ambitious. Luminary's market cap is $2.8 billion. And falling, Hudson interjected. They've missed their last 2 quarterly projections. Salvatore's bleeding money on vanity projects with no clear path to profitability. Their board is fracturing. Nate continued. 3 of their 7 directors are already looking for exits. With your backing in our technology, we can acquire controlling interest within 3 months. Valentina's lips curved slightly. And what's your personal stake in this, Mr. Garrison? Business is rarely this personal without motivation. Nate met her gaze steadily. Bryce Salvatore has taken something of mine. I'm simply returning the favor. Your wife. It was not a question. When Nate's expression hardened, Valentina actually laughed. Do not look so surprised. I do my homework. Virginia Garrison, Nate Hollister, recently appointed as Luminary's new marketing director. Quite a coincidence. Will that be a problem? Nate asked. Valentina studied him for a long moment. On the contrary, I find that personal motivation often leads to thorough results. But know this. I do not invest in revenge fantasies. I invest in sound business strategies. If those two happen to align in this case, all the better. For the next hour, they hammered out details. Phoenix Capital, backed by Obsidian Ventures, would begin quietly acquiring Luminary shares through various shell companies. Meanwhile, Nate's Nexus algorithm would be positioned for strategic partnerships that would drive down Luminary's value while enhancing Phoenix's portfolio. As Valentina prepared to leave, she paused at the door. One last thing, Mr. Garrison. When this is over, what exactly do you plan to do with Salvatore? Nate's expression remained neutral. Business is business, Ms. Rothschild. Nothing personal. Her knowing smile indicated she did not believe him for a second. After she left, Hudson poured 2 glasses of whiskey. You just lied to one of the most dangerous venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. No, Nate corrected, accepting the drink. I just omitted certain operational details. Later that day, Nate resigned from Drake Technologies, citing personal reasons. Maxwell Drake tried to convince him to stay with promises of more money, more responsibility. Nate declined politely but firmly. That evening, when Jenny finally came home, Nate was packing a suitcase. Where are you going? She demanded, watching him fold shirts with military precision. I resign today. I need some space to figure out my next move. For the first time, Jenny looked unsettled. You quit? Without another job lined up? Because of my gift? Do not be so sensitive, Nate. Not everything is about you, Jenny. He up the suitcase. I've been thinking about making a change for a while now. You helped clarify things for me. Where will you go? Hudson has a guest room. I'll stay there until I figure things out. Panic flashed across Jenny's face. We should talk about this. I think you've said everything you needed to say. Nate headed for the door, then turned back. By the way, congratulations again on the Luminary position. I'm sure you and Bryce will work very well together. The look of shock on Jenny's face as he walked out was the first genuine emotion he'd seen from her in months. Chapter 4, Silent Moves. 3 months passed with surgical precision. Nate worked 18-hour days from the offices of Phoenix Capital, now occupying the entire 32nd floor of a sleek downtown high-rise. His personal life was non-existent. His marriage in limbo. Jenny had tried calling, then texting, then showing up at Hudson's apartment, only to discover Nate had moved out weeks earlier. Another block of shares acquired. Hudson announced, entering Nate's corner office with a tablet. That puts us at 22%. Nate nodded, studying the financial projections on his multiple monitors. Salvatore's getting nervous. He called a board meeting yesterday. How do you know that? Nate gestured to one of his screens, where an email from Luminary's board secretary was displayed. We have friends and interesting places. Phoenix Capital had been expanding its influence in ways both visible and invisible. Publicly, they were a rising star and venture capital making strategic investments in promising tech startups. Privately, they were systematically positioning themselves to swallow Luminary Innovations whole. Nate's phone rang. A number he did not recognize. Mr. Garrison, came a female voice with a slight Russian accent. This is Oksana Petrov, Bryce Salvatore's executive assistant. Nate's eyebrows rose. How can I help you, Miss Petrov? Mr. Salvatore would like to meet with you. Tomorrow, if possible. May I ask what this is regarding? He believes you and he might have mutual interest to discuss. Nate's mouth curved into a cold smile. Tell Mr. Salvatore I'd be delighted. Shall we say noon at Phoenix Capital? After ending the call, Nate summoned his team. Besides Hudson, there was Mario Santos, their razor-sharp legal counsel. Zachariah Zach Temple, a former Wall Street quant who now handled their financial strategy. In Tomorrow, Washington, their head of operations and the only person besides Hudson who knew the full scope of Nate's plan. Salvatore's coming here tomorrow, Nate informed them. He's figured out someone's buying up Luminary shares, but he does not know it's yet. What's your play? Tomorrow asked, her analytical mind already running scenarios. We let him think I'm a potential white knight investor. Someone he can bring in to help stabilize Luminary's position against this mysterious hostile takeover attempt. Mario frowned. Is not that dangerously close to security's fraud? Not if I never explicitly agree to anything, Nate countered. I'll listen to his proposal, express interest, and make no commitments. Meanwhile, Zach, I need you to accelerate our acquisition timeline. We're already pushing the limits, Zach warned. If we move too aggressively, the SEC might take notice. Then be creative. We need 30% ownership before their quarterly earnings call next week. After the meeting, Hudson lingered behind. Have you spoken to Jenny lately? Nate's expression hardened. No, want? She came by my place again yesterday. Seemed pretty desperate to find you. Let her be desperate. Nate turned back to his computer. She made her choice. The next day, Bryce Salvatore arrived at Phoenix Capital precisely at noon, exuding the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. Tall, with perfectly styled dark hair and a smile that had graced the covers of business magazines, he extended his hand to Nate as if bestowing a favor. Garrison, quite the operation you've built here in. What, 3 months? Impressive. Nate's handshake was firm. His smile neutral. Thank you. Though I've been laying the groundwork for years. That's what I've heard. Your algorithm has people talking. Salvatore glanced around the modern office with appreciation. Maxwell Drake must be kicking himself for letting you slip away. I doubt he's lost much sleep over it. In Nate's conference room, with its stunning view of the bay, they sat across from each other like chess players sizing up their opponent. I'll be direct, Salvatore said, leaning forward. Someone's making a play for Luminary. Buying up shares through a network of shell companies so complex, it would make a Russian oligarch proud. Sounds concerning. Nate replied mildly. It is. And I need allies. People who understand the vision of what Luminary is building. Salvatore's smile turned conspiratorial. People like you with resources and technological innovations that align with our future. What exactly are you proposing? A strategic partnership. Your Nexus algorithm integrated with our platforms plus a significant capital investment from Phoenix. In return, you get a seat on our board and preferential licensing terms. Nate appeared to consider this an interesting proposition. Though I have to wonder why you approach me specifically. Salvatore's smile never wavered. But something calculating entered his eyes. Your reputation precedes you. A brilliant mind with sudden access to substantial capital. Plus, we have a mutual connection who speaks highly of your potential. Jenny, Nate said flatly. Virginia has been a tremendous asset to our team. Her insight into competitive positioning is remarkable. Salvatore paused, watching Nate carefully. She mentioned you two were going through a transitional period. Did she now? These things happen. People grow apart. Seek different paths. Salvatore spread his hands in a gesture of false sympathy. Business should not suffer because of personal complications. Nate allowed a thin smile. I could not agree more. Which is why I'll need time to consider your proposal carefully. Due diligence, you understand. Of course. Salvatore stood. But do not take too long. Our mysterious buyer is not waiting. After Salvatore left, Tamara entered the conference room. You did not tell him. That would spoil the surprise. Nate replied, turning to the window. How long until we reach 30%? With the trades Zach has cut up? Tomorrow afternoon. Good. And the board members we've approached. Palmer and Richardson are on board. That gives us 2 seats already. Plus our 30% voting block. Nate nodded, watching Salvatore's sleek car pull away from the building below. Schedule the meeting for Monday morning after their earnings call. It's time Bryce Salvatore learned who he's really dealing with. That evening, as Nate worked late in his office, his private elevator chimed. Only 5 people had access codes. And it was well past business hours. He looked up as the doors opened to reveal Jenny, looking both determined and uncertain. How did you get access to my elevator? He asked calmly. Hudson. I told him it was an emergency. She stepped into his office, taking in the expansive space with obvious surprise. This is not what I expected. What did you expect? I do not know. When you said you quit to figure things out, I pictured you so searching on some beach, not. She gestured at the obvious trappings of power surrounding them. Sorry to disappoint. Nate leaned back in his chair. What do you want, Ginny? She moved closer, perching on the edge of his desk. You met with Bryce today. I did. He would not tell me what you discussed. Probably because it's confidential business between Phoenix Capital and Luminary Innovations. Ginny studied him. Really looked at him. Perhaps for the first time in years. Who are you? This company, this office. None of this existed 3 months ago. Perhaps you never really knew me. Nate closed his laptop. Or perhaps you were too busy looking elsewhere to notice what was right in front of you. Is this about Bryce and me? Because it's not what you think. Nate actually laughed. Please do not insult my intelligence on top of everything else. Ginny's expression hardened. Fine. Yes, Bryce and I are involved. But it's not just personal. It's professional. He sees my value. Appreciates my contributions. As he so eloquently explained today when attempting to use you as leverage against me. Her face paled. What are you talking about? He made it quite clear that your relationship was part of his calculation and approaching me. Personal complications was the phrase he used. You lying. Why would I bother? Nate stood, coming around the desk. What exactly did you hope to accomplish by coming here tonight, Ginny? Damage control? Information gathering for your lover? Or were you just curious about the husband you discarded? Tears welled in her eyes, whether genuine or calculated. Nate could not tell anymore. I made a mistake. The gift card, the things I said. I was frustrated and unhappy. So unhappy you jumped into bed with my competitor. It was not like that. It just happened. Things do not just happen, Ginny. We make choices. Nate walked to the elevator and pressed the call button. You made yours. Now I'm making mine. What does that mean? Nate, what are you planning? The elevator doors opened. You'll find out soon enough. Give Bryce my regards. Chapter 5, Boardroom Coup. Monday morning arrived with a media frenzy. Luminary's quarterly earnings had been released, disappointing the market for the third consecutive quarter. Their stock plummeted 17% in pre-market trading, with analysts questioning Salvador's leadership and strategic vision. In the chaos, few noticed the SEC filing that revealed Phoenix Capital had acquired 34% of Luminary's outstanding shares, making them the largest shareholder by a significant margin. By the time the business press caught on, Nate was already walking into Luminary's headquarters for the emergency board meeting that had been called. The security guard at the front desk looked confused when Nate presented his ID. I do not have you on the visitor list, Mr. Garrison. Check again, Nate suggested. I believe Ms. Rothschild from Obsidian Ventures added me this morning. After a phone call, the guard reluctantly issued a visitor badge. As Nate waited for the elevator, he spotted Ginny crossing the lobby with a group of marketing executives. She froze when she saw him, excusing herself from her colleagues. What are you doing here? She hissed, approaching him. Board meeting, Nate replied casually. You're not on the board. The elevator arrived and Nate stepped inside. Not yet. Ginny followed him, waiting until the door is closed before speaking again. Whatever game you replaying, it would not work. Bryce has this under control. Does he? The market does not seem to think so. Nate checked his watch. 17% drop so far today. That's going to upset a lot of investors. It's a temporary setback. We have major announcements planned for next quarter. Too late, Nate said as the elevator stopped at the executive floor. But do not worry, I'm sure you'll land on your feet. You always do. The boardroom was tense when Nate entered. Salvatore was at the head of the table, surrounded by nervous board members and executives. He looked up, his expression darkening when he saw Nate. Garrison, this is a closed meeting. Actually, came Valentina Rothschild's cool voice from the other end of the table. Mr. Garrison is here at my invitation. As representatives of Phoenix Capital, we now hold 34% of Luminary's voting shares. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Salvatore's face flushed with anger. That's impossible. The SEC filings. We resubmitted at 5:01 a.m. this morning. Valentina finished for him. Perfect timing, would not you say? Just before your disappointing earnings tanked the stock price even further. You behind the shell companies. Salvatore realized, glaring at Nate. This was your plan all along. I did try to warn you about taking too long with your decision. Nate replied, taking an empty seat at the table. Now shall we begin? I believe the first item on the agenda is a vote of confidence in the current CEO. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Bryce Salvatore's authority. With Phoenix Capital's shares plus the votes of 2 disgruntled board members, they quickly achieved a majority. Salvatore was removed as CEO but retained his board's seat. A strategic move suggested by Mario to avoid immediate litigation. This is temporary. Salvatore SC, that is, the votes were counted. I still own 18% of this company. My allies are rapidly abandoning ship. Hudson interjected, showing his tablet with incoming messages from Salvatore's supposed supporters. Fascinating how quickly loyalty evaporates when the stock price drops. The door is opened and Ginny rushed in, her face pale with shock. Bryce, what's happening? The marketing department is getting calls from reporters saying you've been ousted. Her eyes landed on Nate, sitting calmly at the board table, and understanding dawned. Miss Hollister, Valentina said smoothly. As this is now a confidential board matter, I'll have to ask you to leave unless you have relevant business to present. On the marketing director, Ginny protested. Of course I have relevant business. Actually, Nate corrected gently. You re the former marketing director. The board has voted to restructure the executive team, effective immediately. Ginny stared at him in disbelief. You see, not do this. We just did. Nate nodded to security, who had been summoned discreetly. Please escort Miss Hollister to HR to process her exit paperwork. As Ginny was led away, her shock turning to fury, Salvatore leaned across the table toward Nate. This is not over. You think you've won? I built this company. The clients, the partnerships, they re-loyal to me. Not the board. We LLC about that. Nate opened a folder and slid a document across to each board member. Our next order of business, reviewing the audit of executive decisions over the past 18 months. ULL find some interesting patterns in Mr. Salvatore's allocation of company resources. For the next 2 hours, Nate methodically presented evidence of Salvatore's mismanagement. Fundity projects approved without proper oversight. Personal expenses charged to the company. And most damning, prototype technologies borrowed from smaller firms without proper attribution or compensation. By meeting's end, Salvatore's remaining allies on the board had fallen silent. The evidence, too overwhelming to dismiss. A temporary CEO was appointed, not Nate, but a respected industry veteran who had been waiting in the wings of Phoenix's suggestion. As the meeting adjourned, Salvatore cornered Nate in the hallway. You think you re so clever? Turning my board against me, taking my company, firing Ginny. But you have no idea who you re-dealing with. On the contrary, Nate replied quietly, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A man who takes what is not his and calls it ambition. This is about Ginny. Salvatore laughed incredulously. You did all this because I slept with your wife. No, I did all this because you re a mediocre businessman masquerading as a visionary, bleeding a good company dry with your ego. Ginny was just a bonus. Nate stepped closer, his voice dropping. But since you brought her up, yes, I do take exception to men who poach other men's wives as trophies. She came to me, Salvatore hissed. Begged me to rescue her from her dead and marriage to a nobody. Nate's smile was cold, and yet here we are. You removed from the company you built. Her, unemployed and humiliated. And me, the nobody, now controlling it all. Salvatore's expression darkened dangerously. You've made 2 powerful enemies today, Garrison. This is not over. Actually, it is. Nate checked his watch. Security should be clearing out your office as we speak. I'd hate for you to miss saying goodbye to your Rothko. Chapter 6, Counter Moves. The headlines the next day were brutal. Luminary CEO ousted in boardroom coup, Salvatore out. Stock rebounds on news of new leadership, Phoenix Capital. Silicon Valley's new kingmaker. Nate read them from his new temporary office at Luminary. Not the CEO's suite, but a modest space near the boardroom where he could monitor the transition while maintaining his position at Phoenix Capital. His phone had not stopped ringing since the news broke. Former colleagues, potential investors, journalists seeking exclusive interviews. He ignored them all, focusing instead on stabilizing Luminary's operations and integrating his Nexus algorithm into their existing technologies. What he could not ignore was the formal notice from Ginny's lawyer delivered by courier that afternoon. She was filing for divorce and seeking 50% of his recently acquired assets, citing her substantial contribution to his career advancement. Hudson whistled when Nate showed him the filing. She's got nerve. I'll give her that. She's desperate. Nate corrected. And she's being advised by Salvatore. How do you know? The law firm, Preston and Willis. They represent Salvatore in all his personal matters. Hudson frowned. This could get messy, Nate. If she starts digging into how quickly Phoenix Capital came together, let her dig. Everything we did was legal, if aggressive. Nate set the papers aside. Besides, I've been preparing for this contingency. Later that evening, Nate returned to the house he shared with Ginny. the modest home she complained about so often. He found her in the kitchen, a glass of wine in hand, looking both surprised and wary at his appearance. "Come to gloat?" she asked, taking a sip. "Just picking up some things." Nate set his briefcase on the counter and began gathering mail address to him. "Your precious algorithm." Ginny said suddenly. "That's what this was all about, was not it? You had it all along. Even when I was belittling you for your lack of ambition. Among other things, why did not you tell me? We could have built something together." Nate looked at her incredulously. "Would that have mattered to you 3 months ago? Or would you still have been seduced by Salvatore's flash and empty promises? You never gave me the chance to choose. That's where you wrong, Ginny. You made your choice every day for the past year. Every time you compared me unfavorably to men like Salvatore. Every time you stayed late at networking events and came home smelling like his colon." Nate's voice remained calm, but his eyes were cold. "The gift card was just the final confirmation of what I already knew." Ginny's expression hardened. "Fine. You want to play the wrong husband? Good luck with that in court. I have witnesses who testify to your controlling behavior, your obsession with work, your emotional neglect. Witnesses like Salvatore? I'm sure the judge will find him completely credible." Nate opened his briefcase and removed a folder. "Before you proceed with this litigation strategy, you might want to review our pre-nuptial agreement. We do not have a prenup. I would remember signing something like that." "Actually, we do." Nate slid the document across to her. "Signed the day before our wedding, along with all those other documents for the house purchase. You were so excited about the ceremony. You barely glanced at what you were signing." Ginny flipped through the papers, her face draining of color as she found her own signature on the final page. "This CA not be legal. It's been reviewed by 3 separate law firms. In case of infidelity by either party, proven with evidence, the unfaithful spouse forfeits all claims to marital assets acquired after the infidelity began." "What evidence?" Ginny demanded. Nate placed a USB drive on the counter. "Hotel receipts, text messages, photographs taken by a very discreet private investigator. Enough to satisfy the terms of the agreement. You've been planning this for months." She whispered, realization dawning. "Before the gift card. Before Luminary. Let's call it contingency planning." Nate gathered his belongings. "You have 2 options. Contest this in a very public, very messy court battle that will drag both your name and sell the tourist through the mud. Or accept a reasonable settlement. This house, your personal accounts, and a clean break. You bastard. I learned from the best." Nate headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Ginny, you might want to ask Bryce about Natalia before you hit your wagon too firmly to his star." "Who's Natalia?" "His wife. Currently living in their Milan apartment with their twin daughters." Nate smiled at Ginny's shocked expression. "What? He did not mention them. How inconsiderate of him." The next morning, Nate arrived at Luminary to find chaos. Overnight, the company's servers had been hit with a sophisticated cyber attack, compromising client data and temporarily disabling their cloud services. Simultaneously, 3 major clients had announced they were reviewing their contracts in light of the leadership changes. It's Salvador, the interim CEO, Leonard Walsh, declared as they gathered in the emergency response room. He's calling in favors, pressuring clients to jump ship, and the cyber attack. Nate asked. The head of IT, a nervous man named Preston, shook his head, too sophisticated for an inside job. "This was professional." "Hard guns," Hudson muttered. "Focus on containment." Nate instructed. "Reach out personally to every affected client. Full transparency about what happened in our response." As they worked through the crisis, Nate received a text from an unknown number. "You take for me. I take for you. This is just the beginning." Nate showed it to Hudson, who whistled. He's not even trying to be subtle. "Good. The more erratic he becomes, the easier he'll be to handle." Nate pocketed his phone. "Have Mario prepare injunction paperwork. When he makes his next move, I want to be ready." That move came sooner than expected. By afternoon, business news channels were reporting that Bryce Salvatore was launching a new venture, Ascend in Technologies, and had somehow secured $150 million in funding despite his recent ouster. More concerning, he apparently poached 12 key engineers from Luminary overnight, including the lead architect of their flagship product. How did he manage that? Walsh demanded. Those employees had non-competes. "Money talks," Hudson replied grimly. "And Salvatore knows where all the bodies are buried at Luminary. He probably had leverage on half those engineers." Nate remained calm, thinking several moves ahead. "This works in our favor. Salvatore's showing his hand too early, operating on emotion rather than strategy. How is losing our core engineering team in our favor? Walsh asked incredulously, because now we have clear evidence of tortious interference and violation of fiduciary duty. Nate nodded to Mario, who was already making notes. File everything. The cyber attack, the client pressure, the employee coaching, build the case methodically. And in the meantime, Hudson asked. Nate's expression was resolute. In the meantime, we accelerate the integration of Nexus. If Salvatore wants a war, let us make sure we have the superior weaponry. Later that night, as Nate worked alone in his office at Phoenix Capital, the elevator chimed. He looked up, expecting Hudson or Tomorrow, but instead found Bryce Salvatore striding in, looking both angry and strangely triumphant. Bold move, coming here unannounced, Nate remarked, not rising from his desk. I thought we should talk man to man. Salvatore helped himself to his seat. You've impressed me, Garrison. I underestimated you. A common mistake. Indeed. So now we read at an impasse. You've taken my company. I'm building a new one designed specifically to destroy what you've taken. Salvatore leaned forward. Or we could come to an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? A truce. You return control of Luminary to me through a negotiated board settlement. I bring my new funding and team back into the fold. We integrate your algorithm and become the dominant force in the industry. Salvatore spread his hands. We both win. Nate studied him thoughtfully. And Ginny. Salvatore's smile was cold. A casualty of war, I'm afraid. Useful for a time. But ultimately expendable. She served her purpose. Which was getting close to you. Learning your habits, your patterns. She was feeding me information for months before things became personal. Nate absorbed this without visible reaction. Though inside, something hardened further. So your proposition is essentially that I hand back what I've rightfully acquired, in exchange for a partnership with a man who used my wife to spy on me, then discarded her when convenient. When you put it that way, it sounds rather one-sided. Salvatore left. But consider the alternative. A prolonged, destructive corporate war that will damage both of us. And do not think I have not noticed your vulnerability. Which is, your precious algorithm depends on processing efficiency. But Ascendant now has the engineers who built Luminary's infrastructure. The very infrastructure you were trying to integrate with. They know all the weaknesses, the shortcuts, the places where your system will fail. Nate allowed himself a small smile. You really should have done more due diligence on those engineers before poaching them. Salvatore's confidence wavered slightly. What do you mean? 3 of your new hires were already working with us. The other 9 have serious vulnerabilities in their personal and professional histories that made them susceptible to pressure. Nate opened his laptop, turning it to show surveillance photos of the engineers meeting covertly with Tomorrow. You were so focused on hurting me that you did not bother to verify their loyalty to you. For the first time, Salvatore looked uncertain. You rebluffing? Am I? Nate closed the laptop. Tomorrow morning, you'll receive evidence of the cyber attack being traced back to contractors hired through intermediaries connected to you. Simultaneously, the engineers you post will discover their access to Ascendant systems revoked, their signing bonuses returned, and their employment terminated. You see not do that. I already have. The only question is what happens next. Nate leaned forward. Here's my counter offer, walk away. Retire quietly with the considerable fortune you've already amassed. Sign a non-compete agreement that keeps you out of tech for 5 years. In return, I do not pursue criminal charges for corporate espionage, tortious interference, and cyber crimes. Salvatore's face flushed with rage. You think you can threaten me? I built Luminary from nothing. I have connections you see not imagine. People who owe me favors. Had. Nate corrected calmly. Past tense. Your stock is falling, breeze, and every sense of the word. Those connections are distancing themselves as we speak. The favors are drying up. By this time tomorrow, you'll be toxic in Silicon Valley. Salvatore stood, trembling with fury. This is not over, Garrison. Actually, it is. But you have not realized it yet. Nate pressed a button on his desk phone. Security will escort you out. Do consider my offer carefully. It expires at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Chapter 7, Scorched Earth. The next 48 hours unfolded exactly as Nate had predicted. The cyber attack was traced to mercenary hackers paid through a complex chain of shell companies that ultimately led back to Bryce Salvatore. The poached engineers found themselves suddenly unemployed. Their reputations tarnished. Ascendant Technologies' funding mysteriously evaporated, leaving Salvatore scrambling to meet peril. Yet Salvatore did not take Nate's offer. Instead, he launched a scorched earth campaign, giving inflammatory interviews to tech blogs, filing frivolous lawsuits, and spreading rumors about Phoenix Capital's allegedly questionable funding sources. Ginny, meanwhile, had aligned herself fully with Salvatore's counterattack. She withdrew the divorce filing based on the prenup and instead began a media offensive, portraying herself as the loyal wife blindsided by her husband's dangerous obsession with destroying Bryce Salvatore. He changed overnight, she told a sympathetic interviewer on TechCrunch's podcast. The man I married disappeared, replaced by someone consumed with revenge. I turned to Bryce for professional guidance and Nate twisted it into something sordid to justify his takeover. Nate watched the interview impassively from his office with Hudson and Tamara looking on in disbelief. She's completely rewriting history, Tamara said, shaking her head, and people are buying it. Hudson added grimly, the comments section is brutal. They repainting you as a tech villain using corporate warfare to punish your wife for a non-existent affair. Let them, Nate replied calmly. The court of public opinion has a short memory, but the damage was mounting. Luminary stock had stabilized after the initial takeover, but now it was sliding again as the ugly public battle spooked investors. Several key partnership deals were put on hold. The Nexus algorithm integration faced delays as team morale suffered under the constant negative press. We need to respond. Wall shark you during an emergency board call. Salvatore's narrative is killing us. No, Nate countered. Engaging directly would only amplify his platform. We focus on execution, not distraction. After the call, Valentina requested a private word with Nate. I did not invest in Phoenix Capital to watch it become collateral damage in your personal vendetta, she said bluntly. Salvatore is proving more resourceful than anticipated. He's desperate, Nate corrected, making his final moves without considering the endgame. And what exactly is your endgame, Mr. Garrison? Because from where I'm sitting, it appears we at a stalemate. Nate met her piercing gaze. A cornered opponent is predictable, Ms. Rothschild. I've been waiting for Salvatore to exhaust his conventional options before he resorts to his true nature, which is criminal. Nate said simply. He's always skirted the edge of legality in his business dealings. Now that he's lost everything, he crossed that line definitively. Valentina studied him for a long moment. You rebaiting him? I'm allowing him to reveal himself. The next morning, Nate received an unexpected visitor at Phoenix Capital, Special Agent Miranda Torres of the FBI Cybercrimes Division. Mr. Garrison, she said after being shown into his office. I believe you've been expecting me. Nate raised an eyebrow. Have I? 3 weeks ago, we received an anonymous tip about potential cyber espionage targeting your company and Luminary Innovations. The evidence package was comprehensive. She set a folder on his desk, including predictions of future attacks that have since materialized exactly as described. Fascinating, is not it? Agent Torres gave him a knowing look, almost as if someone had inside information on what was being planned, or perhaps was setting a particularly elaborate trap. Nate remained impassive. How can I help with your investigation? Agent Torres. We've traced the latest cyber attacks to a group based in Eastern Europe, but their funding came through a network of offshore accounts. We believe Mr. Salvatore is the ultimate source, but we need more evidence to make the case. And you think I might have such evidence? I think you've been 3 steps ahead of everyone from the beginning. Torres leaned forward slightly, including us. Nate considered his options, then opened a drawer and removed a USB drive. This contains communications between Salvatore and the hackers routed through intermediaries. The encryption was challenging but not impossible to break. How did you obtain this? Legally, Nate assured her. Salvatore used Luminary resources to coordinate the attacks. As a board member with oversight responsibility, I had authority to review suspicious network traffic. Torres took the drive, looking skeptical but intrigued. This is not just about corporate warfare for you. Is it, Mr. Garrison? I believe in consequences, Agent Torres. Some people think wealth and connections place them above the law. Nate's eyes hardened slightly. I disagree. After Torres left, Hudson entered, looking concerned. FBI, that's playing with fire, Nate. Calculated risk. Torres has been building a case against cyber mercenaries for months. I simply help connect some dots. And Salvatore will react exactly as expected when he learns of the FBI's interest. Nate checked his watch. Speaking of which, we should prepare for his next move. It should come within the next 12 hours. That evening, as Nate worked late, his private security detail alerted him to his situation at his apartment building. Someone had attempted to break in, triggering the silent alarm. Police had responded and apprehended a man who claimed to be working for a private investigation firm hired by Bryce Salvatore. What was he looking for? Nate asked the security chief over the phone. Would not say specifically, but he had sophisticated copying equipment designed for documents and digital media. Interesting. Nate glanced at his watch. Faster than I expected. Have our legal team meet the police. I want maximum charges pressed. Meanwhile, across town, Ginny was meeting Salvatore at an upscale hotel bar. Both of them looking increasingly desperate. The FBI visited my lawyer today, Salvatore said, downing his scotch in one gulp. They're rebuilding a case on the cyber attacks. Can they trace it back to you? Ginny asked, her face pale. Theoretically, no. Practically, he grimaced. Maybe I used cutouts and proxies, but nothing as truly untraceable these days. What about our plan to find leverage on Nate? My guy got caught breaking into his apartment. Amateur hour. Salvatore's expression darkened. Your husband is always one step ahead. It's like he's anticipating our every move. He's not psychic. Ginny insisted. He's just careful and calculating. There has to be something we can use against him. Some vulnerability. Salvatore studied her for a long moment. There's one thing we have not tried. The one vulnerability even Nate Garrison ca not guard against completely. What's that? You. Salvatore leaned closer. He might have protected himself legally and professionally. But emotionally? There's always residual attachment in a marriage. No matter how bitter the end. Ginny frowned. What are you suggesting? A reconciliation play. You go to him. Contrite and vulnerable. Tell him you've seen through me that I manipulated you. Play to his ego. Say you were in awe of what he's built. That you regret not believing in him. Salvatore's smile was cold. Get back into his life. His home. His confidence. Find what we need to destroy him from the inside. Ginny hesitated. Something like doubt crossing her face. I do not know, Bryce. Nate's not easily fooled. He's still a man. And men have weaknesses. Salvatore grabbed her wrist, squeezing too tightly. Unless you're having second thoughts about us. No, of course not. She pulled her hand away, rubbing her wrist. I'll do it. But I need time to make it convincing. Time is the one thing we do not have. The FBI is closing in. Investors are abandoning me. And your husband is systematically dismantling everything I've built. Salvatore's expression hardened. You go to him tomorrow. Tonight, we prepare your strategy. Unknown to them, their entire conversation was being recorded by a waitress who placed fresh drinks on their table. A waitress who worked for Tomorrow, Washington rather than the hotel. Chapter 8. The final play. The following morning, Nate convened his inner circle at Phoenix Capital. Hudson, Tomorrow, Mario, and Zach. They listened to the recording of Ginny and Salvatore's conversation in grim silence. So they getting desperate. Hudson observed when it finished. As expected, Nate replied. Salvatore's running out of options. His legal troubles are mounting. His reputation is in tatters. And his financial resources are dwindling. What about Ginny? Tomorrow asked. She seemed hesitant about their plan. He's hesitant but compliant. Nate corrected. She's made her choice again. So what's our next move? Zach inquired. Always focused on the practical. Nate smiled slightly. We spring our own trap. He outlined his plan, which he had been developing for weeks. Ever since he anticipated this exact scenario. By the time he finished, even his closest allies looked somewhat unsettled by the ruthless precision of his strategy. That's comprehensive, Hudson said finally. Salvatore left me no choice. Nate replied. He's escalated at every turn from cyber attacks to attempted breaking and entering. This ends now. Later that day, as predicted, Nate received a call from Ginny asking to meet. Her voice was tearful, contrite, a performance that might have been convincing had he not heard her plotting with Salvatore hours earlier. They agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant in Palo Alto. Nate arrived early, ensuring everything was in place for what would follow. Ginny arrived looking appropriately distressed. Designer clothes slightly rumpled. Makeup subtle enough to highlight rather than hide her red eyes. She'd always been skilled at managing her appearance to create exactly the impression she wanted. Thank you for meeting me. she said softly as she sat across from him. You said it was important. Nate's tone was neutral, revealing nothing. It is. She took a deep breath. I've made a terrible mistake, Nate. With everything. He's not who I thought he was. The things he's been doing. The person he's becoming since you took control of Luminary. Frightening. In what way? He's obsessed with destroying you. That's all he talks about. All he thinks about. She reached across the table, attempting to take his hand. Nate subtly moved his hand away, ostensibly to adjust his napkin. I realized I was just a pawn to him. A way to get at you. And that bothers you now. It did not seem to when you were giving him that $10 gift card. Ginny winced. I deserve that. I was cruel and thoughtless. But Nate, I never expected any of this. The company, the takeover. Who are you? Where did all this come from? I've always been exactly who I am, Ginny. You just chose not to see it. Well, I see you now. Her expression turned admiring. What you've built, what you've accomplished, it's extraordinary. I was blind not to recognize your potential. What exactly do you want from this conversation? She took another deep breath. A second chance. Not immediately. I know too much has happened. But the chance to show you I've changed. That I understand my mistakes. She lowered her voice. Bryce is dangerous, Nate. He's planning things, desperate things. I could help you, warn you. We could work together like we should have from the beginning. Nate studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, placing it on the table between them. Do you know what this is? Ginny looked confused. Some kind of recorder? That's a signal jammer. It prevents anyone from listening in on our conversation right now. Nate leaned forward. Which means I can speak frankly. You working with Salvatore to get close to me, find dirt or leverage, and help him destroy me. Her face paled, but she recovered quickly. That's absurd. I came here because Salvatore is desperate and you running out of options. Nate's voice remained calm. I know about your meeting last night, about how he squeezed your wrists too hard when you hesitated, about the entire plan you formulated to infiltrate my life again. Ginny's mask crumpled, replaced by cold calculation. You had us followed. I had you monitored, yes. Just as I've had Salvatore monitored since the day I took Luminary from him. Why go through with this meeting then? Why not just ignore me? Because it's time to end this, Ginny. All of it. Nate placed a folder on the table. These are the terms of your surrender. She said. My what? In this folder is evidence of your complicity in Salvatore's schemes. The cyber attacks, the corporate espionage, the attempted break-in at my apartment. Not enough to send you to prison. Perhaps, but more than enough to destroy any chance you have of a future in this industry. You bluffing. Am I? Nate opened the folder, showing her photographs, transcripts, bank records. You've been careless, Ginny. Or perhaps Salvatore has. Either way, the trail leads back to both of you. Her face hardened. What do you want? Your complete disassociation from Salvatore, effective immediately. A public statement retracting your claims about our marriage. And your signature on the divorce papers I've had prepared, which grant you exactly what I offered before. The house, your personal accounts, nothing more. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning. This evidence goes to the FBI, the SEC, and every major tech publication. Nate's voice remained conversational, but his eyes were steel. Your choice, Ginny. A comfortable, if diminished life or potential federal charges alongside Salvatore. She stared at him, searching for any sign of bluff or weakness. Finding none, her shoulders slumped slightly. You really did have it all planned from the beginning, did not you? Even before the gift card. You were just waiting for an excuse. No, I was waiting to see if you were still the woman I married. Nate closed the folder. You made your choice clear long before the gift card, Ginny. That was just your final mistake. And Bryce? What happens to him? That depends entirely on his next move. Nate checked his watch, which should be happening right about now. Across town, Bryce Salvatore was being led out of his luxury condo in handcuffs. FBI agents, including Agent Torres, surrounding him as reporters gathered on the street below. Bryce Salvatore. Torres announced for the benefit of the cameras. You under arrest for conspiracy to commit computer fraud, corporate espionage, and interstate transmission of threats. You have the right to remain silent. The evidence package Agent Torres had received that morning was comprehensive. Emails, financial transfers, recorded conversations, and testimony from the hackers themselves, who had chosen to cooperate rather than face lengthy prison sentences. Back at the restaurant, Nate showed Ginny the live stream of Salvatore's arrest on his phone. Her face drained of color as she realized the full extent of her miscalculation. You set him up. He set himself up. Nate corrected. I simply made sure his actions had consequences. Ginny stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Who are you? I told you before. I'm exactly who I've always been. Nate placed a pin on the table beside the folder. Your decision, Ginny. Salvatore's path or a clean break. She picked up the pin with trembling fingers. I never stood a chance, did I? You had every chance. Every day of our marriage was a chance to see me for who I was. To be a true partner rather than someone looking for the next opportunity. Nate's voice carried no anger now, only finality. But we not rewrite the past. We can only decide what happens next. Ginny signed the papers. Her signature shaky, but legible. As she did, something small fell from her purse. The $10 Burger King gift card. Somehow preserved through everything that had happened. Nate picked it up, a slight smile touching his lips. Keep it, he said, placing it back in front of her. As a reminder that the price of betrayal is always higher than it seems. Chapter 9 Aftermath 6 months later, Nathaniel Garrison stood at the windows of his office at Phoenix Capital, watching the San Francisco skyline glitter in the evening light. The view had changed little, but everything else had transformed. Luminary Innovations, under the leadership of Leonard Walsh with Nate's guidance, had not only recovered, but thrived. The Nexus algorithm had revolutionized their core products, making them industry leaders in AI efficiency. Their stock had tripled since Salvatore's arrest, and the company culture had evolved from cutthroat competition to collaborative innovation. Phoenix Capital had expanded its portfolio, becoming one of the most sought-after investment firms in Silicon Valley. Nate had developed a reputation for funding, not just profitable ventures, but meaningful ones, technologies that solved real problems rather than chasing trends. Hudson entered without knocking, as had become his custom. Quarterly reports, he announced, placing a tablet on Nate's desk. We've exceeded projections again. Valentino will be pleased. Pleased? She is practically giddy, in her terrifying, stoic way. Nate smiled slightly. Any word on Salvatore? Pleaded guilty to reduced charges. 5 years in a minimum security facility, plus restitution. His lawyers negotiated it down from the original 15. Hudson hesitated, and Ginny called again. Nate's expression remained neutral. What does she want this time? Same as before, a meeting, a chance to explain herself. Nothing to explain. Nate turned back to the window. The divorce is final. She has her settlement. It's over. The truth was more complicated than Nate let on. The victory over Salvatore and Ginny had been complete but not without cost. For weeks after their final confrontation, Nate had worked himself to exhaustion as if trying to outrun some unnamed feeling that pursued him in quiet moments. It was not regret exactly. Every move he made had been justified, measured, proportional to their betrayal. Yet something lingered, not doubt about his actions, but questions about what came next. After revenge, what remained? Tamara had asked him that directly during a late-night strategy session. You've won, Nate. Completely. What now? He had not had a good answer then. But over the past months, something had begun to form, a vision beyond revenge, beyond proof of his worth. Phoenix Capital was evolving from an instrument of his retribution into something meaningful, a force for innovation that reflected his true values rather than his reaction to betrayal. The Palmer Foundation called again, Hudson continued, breaking into Nate's thoughts. They're serious about the partnership for educational technology and underserved communities. It's not our usual investment profile, but let's do it. Nate decided. Set up the meeting. Hudson looked surprised. That's unusually quick for you. Some decisions do not require extensive analysis. Nate replied. This aligns with our new direction. After Hudson left, Nate sat at his desk and opened his top drawer. Inside was the only tangible reminder he kept of his former life, a small framed photo of his mother taken the day he graduated from MIT. She had not lived to see what he built, but he liked to think she would have approved of not just his success, but what he chose to do with it. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Garrison, his assistant announced. Ms. Torres is here to see you. Miranda Torres entered his office with the same confident stride she'd shown the first time they met, though now she wore civilian clothes rather than her FBI suit. Agent Torres, Nate greeted her. Or is it still Agent since you've taken leave from the bureau? Miranda is fine. She took a seat across from him. I've been reviewing your proposal. It's ambitious, a cybersecurity initiative that bridges private industry and law enforcement. Too ambitious? No, she smiled slightly. Just ambitious enough to be interesting. The kind of project that could actually make a difference in how we approach digital crime. Is that a yes then? It's a yes with conditions. Miranda leaned forward. I need complete operational independence. No corporate interference in investigations. Even when the targets might be your competitors or partners. Agreed. The foundation will be independently governed with your team having full autonomy. She studied him curiously. You've changed since our first meeting. Have I? The man I met 6 months ago was focused on one goal, bringing down Bryce Salvatore. He was meticulous, ruthless, single-minded. She gestured around his office. This is something different. Constructive rather than retributive. Nate considered this. Perhaps revenge is just the catalyst, not the destination. Philosophical. Miranda stood. I'll have my team review the final documents. But pending that, we have a deal. After she left, Nate returned to the window. Watching the city lights brightened as dusk deepened into night. His phone buzzed with a text from Valentina. Palmer Foundation is an interesting choice. Relief work rather than revenge. Evolution suits you, Garrison. He smiled slightly. Yes, evolution. From the trailer park to MIT. From overlooked engineer to Silicon Valley power player. From a man defined by what had been done to him to a man defined by what he would build next. His phone buzzed again. An alert from security downstairs. A visitor had arrived. One not on his calendar but whose name was familiar. Maxwell Drake, his former boss. Send him up. Nate instructed security. Minutes later, Drake stood in his office, looking both impressed and uncomfortable. Garrison, quite a setup you've built here. What can I do for you, Max? Drake shifted his weight. I'll be direct. Drake Technologies is struggling. The Bellwith project you were working on before you left. We not make it work without your input. Our stock is tanking. I'm here to ask for help. The irony was not lost on Nate. The man who had coveted his wife, who had undervalued his contributions for years, now stood before him essentially begging. You want me to bail out Drake Technologies? Not bail out exactly. A strategic partnership. Your expertise, our infrastructure. A year ago, even 6 months ago, Nate might have savored this moment. Might have engineered it specifically for the satisfaction of refusing Drake to his face. But now he found that anticipated pleasure hollow. Have your team send over the project files and financials? I'll have my people look at it. Nate's tone was professional, devoid of either malice or gloating. If there's a viable path forward that benefits both companies, we'll explore it. Drake looked surprised at the lack of rejection. Just like that. Business is business. Mac's personal history does not factor into sound strategic decisions. After Drake left, Nate turned once more to the window. Below, a light rain had begun to fall, softening the hard edges of the city. In the reflection of the glass, he could see his office, his success, the tangible results of his calculated vengeance. But it was what he could not see that now interested him more. The path forward, the possibilities beyond the constraints of the past. The $10 gift card that had once symbolized his humiliation had become, in the end, just a footnote in a much larger story. His phone rang. Hudson again. The Miami team just reported in. The test deployment of Nexus in hurricane prediction models is showing unprecedented accuracy. They recalling it a breakthrough. Good. Nate replied, that's very good. And it was not because it added to his wealth or power, but because it mattered, because it saved lives. Because it was building rather than breaking. Nate Garrison, who had orchestrated one of the most methodical corporate takedowns in Silicon Valley history, found himself smiling at a simple realization. The best revenge was not just success. It was purpose.